Henrico County students and families. My name is Kelly Arkwright, and I'm a 5th grade teacher at Adams Elementary School. I'm very excited to be sharing a lesson with you today. First, I'd like you to think about the following sentences. First, pick up your room. Next, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. And finally, my alarm yelled at me to get out of bed. Do you know what I mean when I say these sentences? You may know what I mean, but do they actually mean what they say? Can you literally pick up your room? Would you really want to eat a horse? And can your alarm actually yell at you? All of these are examples of figurative language. Figurative language is used when something is said or written in a way that doesn't have its normal, literal, everyday meaning. It is also used to compare two different things. Figurative language just makes language more interesting. Today, I will be doing a think aloud to help you understand how to better recognize figurative language in text, and also think about what the author means when they use that language. Good readers are always on the alert for word choice. Looking for strong words and phrases helps us to better understand the author's meaning and the author's feelings. This skill can be used when reading poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. Today, I will show you how to use this skill with a nonfiction selection from this book called How They Croaked, The Awful Ends of the Awfully Famous. The section we will be reading is adapted from the original book, and it is about Amelia Earhart. While reading, I will be on the alert for strong words and phrases. Then I will think about why the author included these phrases and what they mean. Flying an airplane in the early 1900s was an extreme sport. A runway was any piece of land without a tree on it, and planes were cramped, loud, lowy places without bathrooms or cup holders. One false move and you'd be dead. It must have been the false moves that got Amelia's heart pumping, not in a "I'm going to die" way, but more in a "that's a blast, I'm doing that again" way. She had what it took for aviation stardom. She was fearless, adventurous, and addicted to breaking records. That attitude and high altitude made Amelia Earhart who she was, until the bad odds about gravity caught up with her. Amelia was born in 1897 in the state of Kansas. It was a world without airplanes or even cars, but she was on the move early. At 3, when her little sister was born, Amelia went to live with her lonely grandparents to keep them company. Her grandmother could take the fun out of an ice cream sundae, and her grandfather didn't know what day it was. It was a free-for-all over there. Amelia got away with hunting for snakes, sliding off the roof, and going face first downhill on a sled. She was smart, especially in math, except she never actually learned the math formulas. She used the same strategy that she used for everything else. She winged it. After reading this section, there was one sentence that stuck out to me as having some strong figurative language. This sentence, her grandmother could take the fun out of an ice cream sundae, tells me that the author wants us to know that her grandmother was not a lot of fun. The way I think about it is that most people like ice cream sundaes, and they think it's really fun to make and eat them. If her grandmother could take the fun out of something that fun, then her grandmother must be pretty boring or even mean. So in my author's meaning column, I'm going to record that Amelia's grandmother was boring and not enjoyable to live with. Okay, let's continue reading. By 11, Amelia was independent. She moved back in with her parents because her dad got work in another state. Amelia's moody dad had to chase down jobs wherever he could. The Earhart family's survival strategy was to keep moving, but not always in the same direction. Her parents separated, reunited, and separated again. They had moved to Kansas Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Canada, Massachusetts, New York, and finally California. She was always the new girl in town. Amelia got around, but her life was going nowhere. The only steady thing she had were chronic sinus infections. At 23, with a headache and nothing better to do, she and her impulsive dad went to watch pilots flying airplanes in crazy loops and spins. It was enough to scare anyone, but Amelia signed up for lessons. She zipped herself into a leather jacket and started using wingspan in all of her sentences. But she was no natural. Amelia crashed planes into hedges, flipped over, careened off hot runways, stalled out, and forgot to fill the gas tank. Her first instructor told the reckless Amelia to find another teacher. You'd think that would have made Amelia buckle down and be more teachable, but it didn't. These paragraphs have actually a lot of examples of figurative language. The one that we are going to discuss is this first sentence in this paragraph. It says Amelia got around, but her life was going nowhere. I'm thinking that the author is referring to how much her family moved, since that was in the paragraph before. When it says that her life is going nowhere, I think that might mean she isn't doing a lot to make her life better. Maybe she didn't do very well in school, and she doesn't really have a job as she's getting older. So that might mean the author is saying that she's just not very ambitious. In my author's meaning category, I am going to record that Amelia did not have a lot going for her as she got older. Let's see how she does as an airline pilot. At 24, with inheritance money from her long-gone grandparents, Amelia bought herself an airplane. She probably should have paid for a lot more lessons with that money. Instead, up Amelia went, flying by the seat of her pants, with fearless disregard for the dangers of being that far off the ground. She went so high she set a record, flying higher than any other woman ever had, 14,000 feet. In this section, the figurative language that I noticed is this phrase, flying by the seat of her pants. Now, when I read that, I know that the author means that she's flying in a plane, but she's not actually flying by the seat of her pants. If I keep reading, it seems like the author is saying that she's impulsive and made decisions without really thinking through things. So in my author's meaning category, that's what I'm going to record. Amelia didn't think through things before doing them. Okay, we have one more section to complete. Amelia's last flight. Amelia took off from Leh for Howland Island without the latest weather report. The headwinds were 11 miles stronger than what the old report had indicated, which drastically changed how much fuel she'd burn. Every little thing mattered, every foot of runway, every gallon of gas, but this was the kind of stuff Amelia skipped over her whole life. Somewhere between Leh and Howland Island, Amelia had reached the point of no return. The U.S. Navy searched for her plane for 17 days, but Amelia Earhart was never heard from again. Amelia's own failings played the lead part in her death. Risk without knowledge is just winging it, a daredevil attitude that will catch up to you sooner or later. Blind to her own weaknesses, Amelia cut a few too many corners. She was a risk taker, and no one in history was ever quite like her. People have been searching for her since her plane disappeared on July 2nd, 1937. I know that these paragraphs are telling me that Amelia was reckless and made dangerous decisions, which is what led to her death. When I see this saying, Amelia cut a few too many corners, I know that I've heard it before. I also know that Amelia was impulsive, so I think this means that she did things without going through all the steps or following the directions. So I think when the author says this about Amelia, the author is saying that Amelia didn't always follow the rules. So after reading this, we've learned quite a bit about Amelia Earhart. And while reading, I was on the alert for word choice. I found a lot of examples of figurative language and thought about what the author meant by including those phrases. When we look at all of the notes that we wrote, I would say that the author thinks that Amelia Earhart was a risk taker who did not take the time to do things the way most people would do them. The author also believes that this is what caused her to die at a pretty young age. Now I'm going to show you how to do figurative language to improve your writing. So I have a few sentences of a first draft. My draft says, I had a rough morning. First, my alarm went off. I fell out of bed at the sound. As soon as I did, my mom told me I better clean my room. So those sentences make sense. They tell me what happened, but they're just not very interesting. So in order to improve my writing a bit, I decided to revise those sentences and include some figurative language. Here's my revised draft. I got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. First, my alarm yelled at me to get up. I fell out of bed at the sound. As soon as I did, my mom told me to pick up my room right away. So you see, with just a few changes, our writing becomes just a little bit more interesting. Thank you very much for spending the time with me to listen to this lesson. I hope you found it informative, and I hope you can go on and find lots of examples of figurative language in your reading and writing.